Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Industry Insiders. Today I'm joined by Ed Miank. Is that correct? Did I say that
Mike.
correctly? Mike?
Mike. Yep,
Mike. I was going to ask you ahead of time and I spaced
that's
that.
right.
Who brings a deep project management and construction execution perspective to the commercial real estate development world. Ed comes from a general contracting background, including time with DPR construction, and now focuses heavily on project management, budgeting, scheduling, and helping large projects actually get delivered in the real world. This is going to be a really practical conversation for anybody involved in construction development, operations, or project leadership. Welcome, Ed.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Could you give us the Cliff Notes version of Ed Mink and how you got here to where you are today?
Sure. Avoided construction like the plague. Family, family has been in construction for feels like for forever. Uh, my father is a general contractor consultant. My own brother is a owner's rep. My other brother is a commissioning agent. My sisters are somehow involved in construction in some way, either in public health or in mortgage and financials. You know, this is family goes back for decades in construction. So avoided like the plague, went into restaurants to, be in the other safe industry, and had a family, had kid on the way, needed steady work, and went into construction. And that's been it ever since. Started out as a laborer, worked my way up pretty quickly from cutting and threading fire sprinkler pipe to being the estimator in the office for fabrication. Then the economic downturn in 08, 09 happens, and laid off, move into being general construction role as a assistant to the superintendent, and then assistant superintendent to a superintendent, to coming out to Texas from California and being a superintendent here, to becoming a project manager within 6 months, and then from general contracting into being an owner's rep as a third party project manager, and doing more and more complex work with each step along the way.
So you've touched all the bases on the way up here.
Yep. I like to joke around that I've screwed up enough stuff. I know what not to do.
No, maybe that's the best way to look at it. Uh, tell us about tell us about Cresa because they seem to have a huge they've got a much wider influence than one might think, the number of employees and the number of different areas of this company. So kind of run us through that a little bit.
Sure. So Cresa, that's stands for Corporate Real Estate Service Advisors. Founded in early 90s with the intent on being just tenant focused commercial real estate. Um, they've added more and more service lines over the years, but we are, don't quote me on this, but we're over 1,500 brokers across the country with a international relationship with Knight Frank. For project management, so project and development services, we have 350 project managers that are embedded with clients. That group is called PPM. We then have another 125 or so of us that are dedicated in the brokerage offices for construction and project and development. We've got capital services group as well. We've got lease administration. We've got workplace solutions. I mean, it runs the gamut on what we have. So very diverse workflows coming in, but we're sitting pretty. One of our biggest things that sets us apart is that we avoid conflicts of interest as much as possible. So often what you'll see, the landlord's broker will also be the tenant rep broker, which doesn't lead to the tenant getting the best representation as possible. So our goal is we're not going to represent, if we're representing the landlord, we're not going to represent the tenant. If we're representing the tenant, we're not going to represent the landlord. And we'll make sure that that is made clear and we don't step over that boundary. In the same way with our project development services, we try to always be engaged and be brought in on our tenants or clients' projects in order to make sure that they are getting the best representation possible. Because if the landlord's project manager is the one managing the project for the tenant, who has the tenant's best interest? Because if it's the landlord's PM, one would believe that they have the landlord's interest first and foremost.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot to unpack with this company. I had no idea until I started looking into it.
Yep.
So, Ed, during our prep call, you mentioned you came out of the general contractor world about 4 years ago. Your last stop at DPR.
Mm-hmm.
What was your biggest mindset shift moving from the contractor side into the project and development side?
Well, some things translate pretty well, right? It's all construction's customer service industry first and foremost. You can't build something unless you have a client. But the biggest mindset shift for me was coming out of being able to delegate. So as opposed to being, as a subcontractor, you've got your specific scope of work. And as the general contractor, you have all the scopes of work. Well, going up even further, being the owner's representative, you are the umbrella that's covering every single aspect of it. So from due diligence, the initial consultants for geotechnical or environmental, to the design firms that are engaged, all the way down through the general contractor, and even further into the subcontractors. So it's that stepping up a level, but it's also going at it from instead of being a boots on the ground to 10,000 foot level view, it's going up to being a 30,000 foot view and seeing everything that's coming down the pike, as opposed to it just being where this is the day to day, this is the day to day, here's a change order, here's a change.
So, from your perspective, what does the owner's side misunderstand most about the contractors, and vice versa? What does the contractor side misunderstand most about the ownership side?
Part of it, there's a lot of overlap that is, gets forgotten about. It kind of tails into a few other things that we were going to talk about, but oftentimes the ownership is more focused on the financial aspect, which is of primary importance for the client, but it's the methodology of which that the work is being installed is important, and having an owner's representative who is knowledgeable of what is actually taking place, as opposed to it being just from a high level view. In the same way, though, on the general contracting side, it is in a sense it's like a blinders on a horse, right? They're seeing, specifically it's tunnel vision, they're just seeing their scope of work. I got to get this done to get done by this date within their own budget to make the most money possible, versus the owner side, it's seeing everything around to save the client the most money. So part of it is how is the building being built? How is the project being built? One. But what is missed by the ownership side often is, it's not missed, but it's forgotten about, is that everybody there is in business. They're not, the GCs aren't there, the subcontractors aren't there to do a project for free. And a lot of times what happens is you'll get an owner's rep or an owner even that is trying to beat up the contractor and the subcontractor and holding every single little mistake over their head in order to get cost down. One of the tacks I like to take, because I have been on the subcontracting side, I have been on the general contracting side, I have been, run my own P&L within the GC, that I know when they're going to lose money. But it's that balancing act of, is it worth it forcing this mistake down their throat, or are we going to get the benefit of it down the road by being a good partner, by getting them built up so that they're set up for success, because my margin for cost might be enough to be able to cover that and trade for it down the road.
Yep, that's a great perspective. I think that's one that we haven't heard yet, in a perspective that is very valuable, because you see both sides of it.
Right.
You've been on both sides of it.
I've lost my shirt before. I mean, it's like, and one bad construction project. I mean, all it takes is one bad construction project to ruin a company of any size, frankly.
Yeah, true. In fact, I was speaking with another gentleman whose company, his firm advises companies on the decisions that they're making.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, he was he was talking about a general contractor who was working on a big project in Vegas, and the contractor was happy when he delayed the project by 2 weeks because he was in a dispute with the architect, and he ended up winning the dispute with the architect and saved himself $600,000 in the process, but lost himself 2 million on the 2 week delay.
Yep.
That,
Yeah.
apparently the contractor was really proud of himself for holding out, but it cost you more if you'd have just worked with the architect and ate that 600,000 versus the 2 million.
Yeah. It's that tightrope that every GC walks and every client walks when it comes to a
Right,
project. Is the speed worth it?
right, right. Yep, absolutely. So you used the phrase bricks and sticks multiple times in our chat before.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's pretty cool because it cuts right through the buzzwords that we usually tend to see in higher level industry speak. So when you say that, what does that philosophy really mean to you?
It's comes down to constructability. So, and like I mentioned in the previous question, it's that knowledge base of knowing how it goes together. I don't, and this is not a dig at other project managers, but I don't have a little book to tell me how to build a project. I can tell you how to do it because I have done it. And some of the best project managers that I've worked with over the years, both on the architectural side and in the general contracting role and on the ownership side, have all had some background within the industry that allowed them to be subject matter experts, at least in a portion of it. A great example of this is engineers. My experience being a fire protection company, the fire protection engineer, in order to get his license, had to spend 6 months in the field. Now, is that 6 months in the field actually installing, or is he out there reviewing, or what? But there is a necessity for project to have experiential knowledge of it, either by observation or by physical. Now, I've physically done it. I've installed work. I've had to go fix rework, both as as labor, as a superintendent, and even as a project manager, going out on site, putting on bags, and having to get up and in there to make sure it gets done in time for the client. I had this is years ago, worked for a company called PR Construction out in California. Great to work with, but they focused on fast casual dining and specifically did convenience stores and Starbucks, 7-Elevens and Starbucks, for different programs within those entities. We'd go out, we would remodel an existing 7-Eleven while it was open. So replace the floor, replace the freezer doors, replace the ceiling. When you're doing 20-hour days, going and sleeping in a hotel for 4 hours, get back up and do it all again. The goal is get in and out as fast as you possibly can. And they figured out how to do a 1,000 square foot Starbucks in a full gut. They'll shut down the store on a Sunday, reopen it by Friday, including all inspections and health department inspections. So with that, there comes a mental shift of, especially as a supervisor, as a superintendent, that I'm involved. I'm not going to, and a little bit of it, maybe it's my own background, but it's a little bit of servant leadership. I'm not going to make my guys be there for hours and hours and hours without being engaged, without being involved, without pitching in. And they're mixing concrete in a wheelbarrow in order to backfill something that needed to be backfilled in order, but it's that, and then that in-person observation of with having done it, so that experience level, and then being there in it with them, it changes the mindset and the attitude on how you're scheduling, on what the guys are doing their daily lives, how you can. I make the joke all the time that I can schedule to stack 4 guys in the corner standing on each other's shoulders to work. I mean, there's a way. You have to be able to do it, because in that sort of environment, there's no other way to do it. Otherwise, you'll set yourself up for failure.
So you mentioned high-level budgeting, scheduling, and costing for larger projects. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, with volatility in labor, materials, and financing, how has the budgeting process changed compared to even a few years ago?
So it's interesting with that. So, I mean, a lot of budgeting as a general contractor, typically what you're doing is you're reaching some contractor base. With the volume of projects that I'm able to draw on now, my own history, and then with the different folks that I work with, we have a lot of historical data that we're either from previous projects or within our general contractor market here in Dallas, but also from the different markets that we're working with across the country. We're able to pick the phone, have good conversations with high end, mid range, and even lower end GCs that cover all aspects of different types of projects. And what we're finding, interestingly enough, is the market volatility related to cost is actually pretty well stable, except for items that we're still seeing high levels of tariffs on. So your aluminum, your copper, that's got more volatility to it. The metals have more volatility to it. But the materials themselves have relatively stabilized over the last year. So we're not seeing the same level of COVID pricing where we're seeing a 10 to 20% increase quarter over quarter. So when in 2020 versus 2021, we were almost 100%, 50% total cost increase on materials. But what we are seeing still are the lead time related issues that are relatively have not gone down. So some of that's regulation based. Some of that is vendor based, and a lot of it is being driven by the current volume of work in the marketplace, specifically for electrical gear, and that's being driven by the data center. So what I mean by that is you have your normal, medium voltage electrical equipment, right? Your panel boards. Those are seeing, if it's just a standard item, you're probably 16 weeks. If it's anything that's a little complex, or you need a higher amperage because you've got larger amounts of voltage coming into the building, 20 plus. But that also is an issue with the transforming equipment. So if anything coming out of a utility provider, because of the volume of work that's going on right now, you're at best 12 months. The worst I've seen it right now, I've got a project that's getting pretty large size piece of equipment, and it's 79 weeks. And that was from date of release, not date of telling them that we want to go forward. So that gear is not showing up until October of next year.
Yeah. That's one thing that I don't think anybody thinks about with these data centers is what has to happen upstream in order
Well,
for.
I mean, Texas is a great example of this right now. There's over $40 billion of data center work and semiconductor work in Texas. One of the things the larger companies are doing, and it kind of creates havoc, but it makes sense, is they're going out and they're either placing bulk orders for projects that haven't even been brought to fruition yet. And even in some instances where they were buying up manufacturing companies in order to make sure that they got their gear first.
Wow. Yeah, that's impressive. Uh, a lot of people can build schedules in software. Far fewer people can build schedules that survive contact with reality. What's the difference between a schedule that looks good on paper and one that actually works in the field?
Well, I mean, really, it comes down to this: the schedule is a living entity. The schedule cannot be static; it has to be updated constantly. And it comes from an owner's perspective. It comes from the constant conversations with the general contractor and the client. From the GC's perspective, it's the constant conversations with the trades as to what's going on, because something might be happening within the marketplace that they're unaware of that's affecting the entirety of their project. Um, but it's that continuous communication that has to occur in order for any schedule to survive the test. An example recently had a project. GC kept pushing out their schedule and pushing out their schedule. No, let me rephrase that. They were sending out their schedule, distributing it, assuming that people were looking at it. The client did not make adjustments to their equipment delivery dates based on the schedule. They just kept assuming that even though it was talked about, here's the new schedule, here's the new schedule. Client didn't review the schedule. And then was surprised when electrical equipment wasn't turned on for them or even in place for them to set equipment down with a potential cost of $150,000 to the client of having equipment installers sitting on site for a month waiting. So, GC's credit, they owned the portion of it that they should have owned. The client owned the portion of it that they should have owned, and they came to an agreement and were able to get temporary power put in place in order for equipment to be installed and tested and ran. Now, the feedback on this, though, is that if you are going to be talking about a schedule, it has to be communicated, and communicated in a way that the client can understand, or that any stakeholder on the project can understand it. And if you're not having buy-in on it, there's not agreement on it, that schedule is no longer a living entity. It's just something that's dead and dying.
Yeah, talk about an unforced error. So one thing I picked up from our prep conversation, you seem to have a very direct leadership style, probably shaped by years and high pressure project environments and deadlines. You joked about earning the right to speak after winning large deals, but underneath that humor is probably a strong standard for performance. How do you build accountability on teams without crushing morale?
So I got to go back in history in order for this to make sense. So I mentioned I grew up in construction, right? I mean, was going to job sites probably from the time I could walk. Um, but I grew up in the industry when it was okay to scream at each other, and then you were best friends by the time you were done. But it was a constant battle, and it was yelling and screaming, it was fighting, and it was arguing, and the feeling that things were going to come to blows. because people are so passionate about it. Because that's the one thing about construction that's a lot of people don't take into account is you got people with varied backgrounds coming together and they are passionate about what they do. Everybody takes a lot of pride in their ability to do something, and then it's a tangible outcome. So from that, I really took a approach, and it's a directed approach of, if I have to yell at you, I don't need you. If we can't figure out how to get something done in a calm and collected manner, then I don't need you around. And that's been my approach. And in my career, I have never I've yelled at one person in my career, and I've yelled at entire job sites in my career at the same time to stress home a point in a safety meeting. But otherwise, so that's really my attitude towards it. But with that being said, it's certain things that I've taken from all the different companies that I've worked at, and one in particular is from DPR when I was there, and the two things that really always stuck out to me. One, in meetings, there's no rank. The most junior person and the most senior person can both have valid ideas. Now, state them, but be ready for the second statement that really followed me from DPR, which is call BS. And it's if something doesn't pass the sniff test, then ignore it. But I need everybody's buy-in and participation. So great example from one of the larger projects I just finished up. This is $165 million with $750 million of manufacturing equipment going in. And we got the first phase of that done from design to equipment install starting in under 7 months. But we had our weekly OAC, right? Owner-Architect Contractor meeting, which was purely that. This is a design team, myself, the client, the general contractor. But we also had weekly meetings with subcontractors, with the client, with the designers, and with me engaged as well, to walk down every single aspect of the project that needed to occur. So then these are design review, but these are also schedule review, and these were also install review meetings that were occurring, then engage the equipment installer in order to make sure that nothing got missed. And what that did is it allowed for accountability across the board, but it allowed for a bond to be developed between everybody so that a subcontractor could feel comfortable enough to talk to me about something. The general contractors, it wasn't just a conversation between me and the lead superintendent or me and the project manager. It was me and the intern who was in charge of this one tiny scope, but he had a question about it and was able to grab me and ask me about it. The other aspect of all this too is when you're developing a team, and if you are leading that team, you have to be approachable enough to give guidance and to also demand accountability and be approachable in such a way that they are willing to come to you with mistakes and with questions without feeling like you're going to treat them like they are an idiot.
So, kind of along this leadership line, what mistakes do you see some younger project managers making?
Forgetting about lead times is one of the big ones. And it's so when you have a project engineer whose entire job is to be focused on getting materials on site, processing submittals, processing RFIs for you, they should be watching and talking to the subs about, hey, when's the gear showing up? When's this showing up? When's this showing up? And it's a failure on their project manager's part that they have not followed up on that. So being surprised that, sorry, it's going to be late. Finding out the week before that tile is supposed to be installed that that specific tile is no longer manufactured, right? That should have been found out 3 months ago when you issued subcontracts out, not the week before. Now, found a workaround for it, but that's a failure. In the same way, finding out that electrical equipment is late the day before it arrives, which happens quite often. And there's always some delay that happens, but it's
Mhm.
that the mistake is in this. This is part of it. This mistake that is made, especially by the younger guys, and I'm guilty of it too. I'm still a young guy. Um, is not picking up the phone and calling people. It is, oh, I sent an email. I sent him a text. Did you call him? Because if you don't call him, you're not going to have that conversation. You're not going to have build that rapport with him
Mhm.
where he's going to be comfortable enough saying, we have a problem. Instead, it's going to be, dear PM, dear PE, sorry, we just found out. But by building and developing that weekly, that daily call to somebody just checking in and saying, hey, look, sorry to keep bugging you. You know, my PM is down my throat. I have to know when this is coming. Just give me an update. Give me an update. Give me an update. Even if it is bad news, it's getting the news.
Having that personal contact, that personal touch,
It's
the
huge.
human touch of things. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's amazing what you can do with just a relationship.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
uh, I've started projects in the past just based on a handshake, and those
Yeah.
days are felt like they were gone. But when you can start, multi-million dollar project just on a notice to proceed and your word that somebody's going to get paid.
Well, and I think and I've noticed this in a few other industries, even in advertising, where it used to be all human contact, and then it became impersonal for a period of time. And it seems like we're circling back
Yeah,
to more human touches versus the um um the strategic technology touches, the cold contact. It's people are coming back to wanting to talk to a person.
yeah, I agree.
So we touched briefly on the call about AI and workflow automation in construction and project management. So from your perspective, where could technology genuinely remove friction from the operations without getting in the way of the actual execution?
Sure. So, you know, BIM modeling has come a long way as part of it. Um, this is where my head goes immediately. So, um, larger projects will do clash detection. So the different building systems, the sprinklers, the electrical, the HVAC, the plumbing, all get modeled into the building, and we're able to go room by room, grid line by grid line, and see, what's going to be an impact to each other. Like the great one is ductwork and fire sprinklers. And it could have been a matter of that piece of ductwork can be moved over 6 inches to accommodate for a fire sprinkler main line to pass next to it, as opposed to through it. And then, so that BIM modeling and that clash detection getting done well in advance, right? But that BIM modeling is pretty labor intensive. It's usually done by somebody who has a specific role in that. Using AI to help that would be tremendous. It would allow for more clash detection to occur on smaller projects as opposed to on larger projects that have a specific budget for that cost. Yeah, that's the other thing I'm seeing lately is renderings for new projects. One of my counterparts just did one for a client, and they're taking a 50,000 square foot interior, TI footprint in building, and she was able to develop a walkable 3D model for the client with an AI platform in order for the client to go through and see how each room was going to look, including down to furniture, and be able to make finish selection changes or room layout changes in real time with my colleague, as opposed to it being a back and forth over weeks, or even having to make multiple drawing revisions over and over and over to get to a specific point. And they were able to do it within, about a week's worth of pre-work and then a 2 hour meeting, as opposed to 4 weeks of due diligence drawings and space planning. So there's some definite benefit to that. I've seen it with building layout being done using robots, going through and laying out walls within a space. I think it's going to be a huge benefit down the road more and more. My colleague and I are currently using AI to develop pursuit lists for other businesses that may not know that they need our services, one, but also to assist our brokers on different industries that they may not be focusing on, but we've got knowledge into, and then using AI to go through and take that info and build spreadsheets that are usable and readable that would have taken one of the two of us to 8 to 12 hours of sitting there and doing data entry and then consistently updating it as more information came out. I've been using AI lately to go through and fact check myself on things as simple as fire sprinklers. And I had a client sitting in the meeting ask me about fire pump, because we were discussing, do we put in a diesel or do we put in an electric fire pump? And AI tab, plug it in, it spits something out while I'm sitting there continuing the conversation, pull it up, I read through it, I fact check it a little bit because I know that it's not always entirely accurate, or where they're pulling the data from might be a little off, but able to make an educated business decision with the client in real time, because I was able to have that assistant help me get it done and in a quick way.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking at a major project early in its life cycle, what signals tell you this project is going to go well versus this thing is headed for disaster?
One biggest thing is the team attitude. So I like to start every single project in the RFP process with this simple question: how are we going to not hate each other at the end of this project? But it's true. If I want to be able to, you got to be able to work with people that you can at least get along with at work, right? And the answers I get are always interesting. They're always kind of telling. I've had some say, well, we're going to go out to dinner. We're going to go do things together. That's not what I'm after. What I'm after is what are the proactive processes that you're going to be doing in order to make sure that we're not becoming and butting heads constantly? What are the systems that you're going to have in place? So I always ask, what kind of project management software are you using? Is it Procore? Is it CMIC? Is it some other version that's out there? The ones that don't have any project management software worry me, right? Because they're doing it, and it's not to say that they can't do it without it, but when they don't, it means that they're not as efficient in certain processes. It also, so going back to the initial question, it's that team development. If the team does not have a good fit, if there is either an owner's rep or a superintendent that is combative, is it the project manager is not strong in a specific aspect? It's figuring that out early and making sure that there's either that person is changed out for somebody else, or it's countermeasures that are put in place and there's a counterbalance of another person that is strong where that person is weak. The other thing is reality. Is the schedule real? Is it based in reality, or is it based on a pie in the sky dream that somebody wants to be in by a specific date with no real achievable method to get there? And I know when I put together an RFP to general contractors, even to art designers, that I'm trying to get my best guess with some buffer of when I think it's going to be done. And then I'll pull it back a couple of weeks because I want them to tell me I'm wrong. Because if they tell me I'm wrong, then I know that they've got a better grasp. They've got a good grasp, not a better grasp. I've got a good grasp on it, but they've got a good grasp as to what the reality is of putting something together.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is financials. Is the budget based in reality as well? Or is it going to involve 5 rounds of value engineering and reducing scope that is a necessity that then has to be turned around and added back in because it didn't work?
Hmm.
And it happens. It happens often where I've got I have a project that's in my mind. We had a change order to the existing slab was at a different elevation than the new slab. The new slab was poured at a benchmark. The existing slab was left in place in specific areas, and then the the shell GC sloped it to the exterior walls to make ADA requirements, right? So there was already a mistake made at the benchmark that the shell general contractor made. The new slab was at a different elevation, but still, we were talking about an 1.5 inch difference. Left it in place, did a micro fill over the top of it, polished it, looked beautiful. But what we didn't know is that existing slab hadn't been prepped properly underneath it and started to move. So now there's a multitude of issues that would have been non-issue if we had opted to take that slab out. $30,000. And we're now talking it's in the magnitude of $250,000. Now, not the GC's fault, not the client's fault, but that would have been mitigated by one small decision.
I'm just trying to save a few dollars just isn't worth that.
Yeah,
It's not worth it.
That's a small example, but those examples happen all the time.
Yeah.
Do we save money by making the room smaller for the compressing equipment? Well, the compressors we didn't take into account is that there's not enough airflow in that room for 3 compressors and the refrigerated dryers and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So VE exercises are great, but VE exercises that you're just purely trying to save money, it's what is the real benefit?
Yeah. Well, and you also, I mean, that you've got an unknown that way, and then you got to factor in weather too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're running a schedule so tight that when you talk about, whether it's a realistic timeline,
Yeah.
and if you're not factoring the possibility of weather somewhere in there, then it throws everything off downstream from that point.
Well, even just holidays. So any
Oh,
project
holidays.
that's ending around the end of the year, beginning of the
Yeah,
year, right?
yeah.
Everybody is shocked that Christmas is coming. Everybody's shocked that New Year's is coming, and that suddenly people are taking 2 weeks off.
Right, right.
But it happens every year. Why isn't that accounted for within the schedule?
Yeah.
I mean, Texas, we know in February, probably around the first week of February, every other year, we're going to get entirely shut down because there's ice.
Yeah, yeah, right,
That has to
right.
be accounted. But if you have
Yeah,
that experiential knowledge, you should be accounting for it within your schedule.
yeah, yeah. All right, Ed, uh, that's all the questions I got for you to do today. Thank you very much for joining us. It was very informative.
No, I appreciate you having me. Really,
Yeah,
really do.
absolutely. Tell everybody, you know, how to get a hold of if they want um, CESA services. Tell everybody how to get a hold of them.
Yeah, so it's literally it's Cresa.com,
Chris.
CRESA.com. Um, you can search locations, but please reach out to me on LinkedIn. Um, and happy to help direct you where you need to go and find the right people.
Excellent. Thanks again, Ed. We appreciate it.
You got it. Have a great day.
Absolutely. You too. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on another episode of Industry Insiders. Take care. You too.